Hello, and welcome to Live Now, where we are building technology together. My name is Ben Friedman, and today we're continuing in a series of videos exploring how enterprise IT is managing with the COVID-19 crisis. And there's no one who has their finger on the pulse of enterprise IT more than my guest today, which is Stephen Foskett from Gestalt IT. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time. And before I ask you any questions, how are you? How's your family and staff? Everyone's healthy and safe, we hope.
Absolutely. And thankfully, most of us are here in Ohio, and the Ohio governor has done a tremendous job. Have people staying at home. We've all been sheltering in place here for a couple of weeks, and we've been managing to flatten the curve in Ohio. So I look forward to seeing other states have that same kind of success.
It is an interesting point. We've been watching here in Arizona, where we're based out of, Ohio versus Michigan, two states so close and close in population and such, and yet you guys have had a lot better results over there in Ohio than they have in Michigan. Maybe that's from the earlier closing downs, or do you have something you attribute that to?
Yeah, I honestly think it's just the earlier close. Ohio issued their orders about 9 days earlier than Michigan. The two states are very similar, and I think we've seen some better results because of it.
Very interesting, very interesting. So as I said before, you do truly have your finger on the pulse of enterprise IT. You work with a lot of the biggest enterprise IT companies that are out there. Just in general, what are you seeing? What are you hearing from those customers that you talk to on a daily basis? How are they managing things?
Yeah, it seems like there's basically two camps out there right now. On the one hand, we've got companies who are, I don't want to say in panic mode, but caught unawares by this. And they're slowing down a lot of activities. They're slowing down a lot of spending. They're really doing quite a lot to kind of throttle back. And then on the other hand, there's a bunch of companies really that have a lot of experience, more experience with remote work. And they seem, full speed ahead. And I think it's been really interesting that it seems like it's cut kind of right down the middle in terms of, whether a company is really stepping on the brakes or really just leaving the cruise control on.
Is there a difference between maybe larger enterprise IT versus the smaller startups? I wonder how much things like liability may play into that, where the larger companies that are maybe more risk adverse are keeping their workers home more, having them do less, and not, obviously everyone's staying home, but maybe those companies are doing even less than the smaller startups that maybe are more tolerant of risk than the bigger companies.
Yeah, I think that could be a good point. And I definitely do see that the larger and older companies seem to be more stepping on the brakes. But that being said, I think that another factor that may come into it is the market. A lot of these smaller IT companies are serving the cloud market, and a lot of these cloud companies are actually seeing more activity now instead of less. So if that's your market, then you're probably not going to be stepping on the brakes. You're going to be trying to do your best to support those companies that need your services the most. Whereas perhaps the larger companies are dealing with a lot of, companies that have employees that are home or maybe don't need as much hardware and software at this point. So I think that might be a bigger factor.
Well, let's turn now and talk a little bit about your business. Gestalt IT does a lot of content creation services for enterprise IT. And of course, you run the wildly popular Tech Field Day events. How has your business had to change now your business? My goodness, your conferences are planned, I'm sure, 6 months, a year in advance. So there's got to be a lot of things that have happened that have changed to affect what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on the one hand, the Gestalt IT side of things, which is sort of content creation, most of that was done remotely anyway. And so that business really hasn't changed at all at this point. But the Tech Field Day events definitely have. I've always been a big believer in in-person events. There's no substitute for meeting in person. But right now it's just not possible. And so one of the big questions for me was, how can we continue Tech Field Day in a virtual format without losing the Tech Field Day feeling? And actually, we've been working with, both internally and with key suppliers like Prime Image to try to develop a virtual version of Tech Field Day. But the goal one when developing that was that it had to have the real field day feeling. So the video production had to be top quality. We've been working a lot with our presenters to help them to basically not just record a Zoom call, but to present as they would at a regular field day event. And it really has worked. So we're pretty happy with the result of the output from the virtual versions of Tech Field Day that we've been doing. Of course, that being said, we typically do a lot of traveling, a lot of planning, a lot of flights and hotels and so on. And that whole part of the business has just been a nightmare because we had to, deal with a lot of suppliers, some of whom are in pretty bad shape themselves. And so we've been trying to be as understanding as possible and to work through it as fairly as possible with those suppliers.
Sure, and Tech Field Day, I know, as well as doing sort of their traditional events, sometimes we've seen Tech Field Day do events at shows, at conferences like Cisco Live and VMworld and what have you. How do you think this is going to affect, as things, obviously right now everything's canceled, but as things do open up a little, how will this affect conferences and events moving forward? Are there things that will come back, or are there other things that you think may have changed irrevocably?
I think we need to make a distinction between open public conferences and private events like Tech Field Day. And that's really, I think, what you're getting at here. I really don't see public, wide open conferences starting up again anytime soon. I think that this whole situation is going to impact, from just a legal and regulatory way, but also from just the feelings that people have. And I think that people aren't going to be comfortable going back to an open public event anytime soon. But that being said, I think that private meetings like Tech Field Day events could resume a little earlier than that, maybe with restricted travel or something like that. So I do think that it's going to change. I think it's going to change for a long time, and I think it's going to have a big impact. So for us, our Tech Field Day events are moving forward, but what we call extra, which is where we bring Tech Field Day to an existing industry event, well, those are all put on hold. And what's happening right now is we're converting those into what we call exclusive, which is a virtual online event with one company. So for example, a company who had to cancel their own show or expo will do an all-day Tech Field Day exclusive event so that they can go through the presentations and they can announce the products and record the videos and so on to get that stuff online, even if they're not doing a virtual version of their conference. Or even if they are doing a virtual version, they're still having us do the exclusive Field Day event, maybe even on a different day, just to get those video assets recorded so that they can share them.
Interesting. Okay. So I don't want to seem so crass as to pick winners and losers during this time, but I am curious if you feel there are specific enterprise IT technologies that have really shined during this event, ones that will do very well if, as you say, people will stay with some of those remote workers. Maybe that'll increase in the future. And what technologies are going to suffer from this as well? Do you have a sense of that?
Well, I think slam dunk is to say that video conferencing is shining and going to be successful.
Definitely.
I know within our own company, we have traditionally wanted to do video conferencing, but we did more just audio phone conferencing because it was easy. But now that our remote folks are so comfortable with Zoom and with other, FaceTime meetings and things like that, I do see us continuing to use that even once the doors are reopened, so to speak. Certainly collaboration software, Slack is moving forward full force, and we're big Slack users, and we've been very happy with that product. I do definitely see that certain products are going to be helped. And, I think the number one for the enterprise space is just generally cloud computing solutions. One of the things that has happened here is that the pattern of work has dramatically changed almost overnight. And companies that had web scale flexible applications that were able to scale up in the public cloud were able to continue operating, whereas companies that relied more on on-premises, internal applications, well, they're facing a lot of problems. So I think that this is just going to accelerate the shift from data center IT and captive IT into real cloud-based IT and solutions, especially for the workforce, if not for the the corporate applications.
Interesting. So last question then, as enterprise IT companies get back to work, what advice do you have for them? You're a small business, but one that has been nimble, has switched over to some more of this remote working. For folks working in enterprise IT, what advice can you give them for making that transition as easy and as professionally as possible?
Well, there's been a lot of great resources to help people learn to work from home. One, I'd like to give a call out. Glenn Fleischman wrote this great book about how to work from home, and it's free. So you just look him up. But I think that the number one advice that I would give is not technical so much as it is, I guess, emotional. And that's that this is a really challenging situation. It's very stressful on everyone. It's stressful on us. And I think that what we need to do is make sure that we're, keeping that in mind. Frankly, we have to be more forgiving. We have to have reduced expectations of people, and we have to allow for the fact that they're facing a lot of personal challenges as well as work challenges. And I think one thing that IT folks can do is, keep that in mind, but also, try to be as understanding as possible with the end users and the folks that are frustrated by this whole situation, and recognize that some of those challenges aren't technical challenges. They're the kind of things that we all need to work with.
I think those are powerful words and wise as well. So I want to thank you for that. And I really want to thank you for coming on here today, sharing your thoughts with our audience. That is all the time that we have for today, but we will be continuing this series of videos on enterprise IT companies and how they are managing in the current COVID-19 situation. But in the meantime, I'm Ben Friedman, and this is Live Now, where we are bringing technology together.